Today, the DLU is bringing you the topic of social media and some tips and tricks in managing and supporting social media, whether it be for you personally or for your organization. Today, we are bringing to you social media experts, Dr. Robin Finley, DLU specialist, and formerly was in control of all the social media at Alma Schools. In addition to that, we have Emily Powell Carpenter, who is in charge of social media and outreach. Her title is actually Social Media and Outreach Coordinator for our Communications Department and the Department of Ed. Welcome, everyone, and Dr. Robin Finley and Emily, take it away.
Okay, well, it's good to see everybody here today. I'm going to start my timer, and I'm going to trust that Emily is going to tell me if I start getting close to my time. Good morning, everybody, and I'm excited to talk to you about social media today. We're going to go ahead and get started because I've got a lot of information. So one of the things that we need to talk about initially is, do you really need social media accounts at schools? Is that really something that you need? And so I think there's some real reasons why you do. It's a really strong tool for your community and parent support. So you've got to be responsible in making sure that you get that information out to your community and your parents, and it's going to help you. Social media is going to help you with that. Engagement happens when you ask your audience to interact with you. And of course, I hope that it's always going to be a positive. If you've ever been involved in one that's a negative, I'll just tell you that it'll set you back a little bit. But everything that you want to do is to put that information out there to engage your audience for the positive. And who can create that within your schools? Who's going to be responsible for doing that? Well, you can have your teachers, your counselors, your media specialists, your principals, your technology, all of those people can create that. And the more that you have that information out there, by the time, this is my first year at the DLU, but we had 147 social media accounts in Alma. Okay, so that's a lot because we ask our teachers to engage, and a lot of them did it on Twitter because, and we're going to talk about the feeds that they use to embed on their web pages. So, you know, you can get as big as you can, but you got to make sure you're going to be able to manage it. And that's some of what we're going to talk about. But most importantly, out of all of it, you need to be responsible for telling your own school story in your school district, because if you don't tell it, somebody else is, and they may end up putting a narrative in there that's not true or is not something that's actually helpful to what you're really trying to do or your mission or your goal. So you need to be responsible for that. And that leads us to thinking about what are some things that I should post in telling my story and how should that happen? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in depth, but overall, you're going to have pretty much 3 types of posts. An informational post is going to be that's going to get information out about a date, an event, and you need to be specific whenever you put that out there, what day it's going to be. Don't say tomorrow we're going to do, because that person may not get on Facebook until tomorrow. So they think it's the next day. So you need to be direct when you're putting out that information. It's Wednesday at 2:30. This is the room it's going to be in, or we're going to go live at that time, whatever that is. You know, that's going to involve your school closings also, but that's informational posts. Then the next ones are going to be those engagement posts. So those are the ones that are a little bit more fun. They're also the ones that you have to monitor a little bit more closely, okay? Because you are asking your audience to engage with you. So that might include an @ symbol, or it might include a hashtag, and we're going to talk about hashtags in a little bit more in depth later. But this would be something like, hey, let me see all of your first day of school pics. Or most of us had a recent snow day. How about let's see those snow pics? Now then, are you going to get some? You might have to delete, okay? Because they're not really snow pics and they're not really first day of school pics. But for the most part, because you're wanting to engage your audience, it's a positive thing to ask them to interact with you. It also makes you seem part of them. you're together in this. And then the last one, which is, and I guess the last two are my favorite ones, is celebrations. So it might be scores from ball games, it might be your all-state choir, your all-state band, any kind of local and state awards. Maybe some goals that have been reached, like sometimes you have the 1,000,000-word readers, those types of things. You want to celebrate your student successes and your teacher successes. So, and you want to support your community. So if your community's got an event going on, it really helps them out to stay engaged with you if you'll reshare what that event is. Now, I will put a caution on that. Be cautious, because if it's something that is asking for money or donations, you need to really think that through. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a couple of slides. So here's some tools that I think can help you out, or some resources, might be more specific. Joe Sanfilippo is someone who actually came to Arkansas, I think it was maybe 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and he spoke at the Data Summit. I heard him there. We ended up having him as a keynote in Alma. I've heard him since then several times. I've read his books. We had the opportunity, Cassandra Barnett, for our Smack Talk for Teachers, interviewed him, and I have that podcast linked here. I think you're going to enjoy that, because he talks about telling the story and your brand. He also does that with Dr. Rod Berger about telling your story. And so that's really where I listened to him. And several years ago, I can't remember what hurricane that was, but Miami-Dade had a hurricane. And one of the things that I heard their social media people talking about was that they put the information on their website for their community to go and get the information off of their own website. So they would have it there before the news ever got it, because somehow the news was not getting the full story, and it was interrupting what they were trying to do to help the kids. So they said, we want to be in charge of telling our own story. And that's why I think that's important. The next part of that is Andrea Gribble, and this is where you're going to be able to see some resources that may be able to help you in some ideas. So she has Social School for EDU. This is something, again, that Joe Sanfilippo, he recommends this, something that he uses for the crickets at Falls Creek. And I'm going to switch to that so that you can see this. And these are some of the links that are on there. So this is what the Social School for EDU looks like. And you can sign up for that newsletter. That's a free newsletter that you're going to get. And she gives you ideas. But the greatest set of resources comes, and where I got this link, but also it's embedded in your slideshow there. If you go down here to the very, very bottom of the page, you're going to be able to see where it says down here some of the resources and things. So that's where I got the link from. And this is that link. So this has all sorts of free resources for you to go and access to help you with your social media, to help you go and, hey, I want to do a campaign, but I don't really know how to do that with hashtags. Hey, I want to do this. I don't really know how to do this. And then I've linked a couple of them just to show you an example that's on the bottom of that slide. So this first one is best practices in social media. So you can kind of see that she just gives you an overview. And again, all of this is open source. She does have a paid part, and I don't really know what that involves because I've never paid for that part. I've always just used all of her free tools and her free suggestions. But like for example, what are the posting times? And she gives you 6 a.m., 11 a.m., 3 p.m., and 7 p.m. And we're going to look at some of our specific analytics for things and how you might want to do that. But she just gives you some really good hints. The other thing that I'm going to tell you, and this one is you need to keep up with this one, okay? Because Emily and I know this one for sure. You've got to set boundaries when you're really doing a social media campaign and you have all of these pages and events going on and stuff like that, because people will send a message to you on Messenger, on Facebook, whether you're opened or closed. Hey, is school open tomorrow? Hey, my kid left his shoes at the gym. How can I get in the gym? We got to have the shoes tonight for such and such. I mean, it is nonstop. So this is a really good one. A really good set of advice because you're going to have to put those parameters around there, because really social media is 24/7. It really is. So I'm gonna switch back over here to my slideshow, and all those links that I just showed you are linked right down here in the bottom of this. So everything there is there for you as well. We need to talk about some safety considerations, I think, really before we start talking about posting. So let's go ahead and talk about this just a little bit. There's a difference between a private versus a public social media account. And as you note down here at the very, very bottom, I could talk about this for a very long time. And the reason that I say that is because my dissertation was on data privacy, cybersecurity, and safety for teachers and students. So I had to do a lot of research about all of that. But one of the things that I want to talk about specifically for us here in Arkansas is the recommendation, the guidelines that are from the Arkansas Professional Licensure Standards Board. So I'm going to switch to those so that you can see that real quickly. And again, I have those linked there. And one of the things that they talk about here is that on number 4 is that your professional and personal accounts on social media should be kept separate. And that's really one of the considerations that you need to think about. And I know some of us are in smaller communities and you might go, oh, well, that's not really going to matter. It's not really going to matter. And for example, I have a group of Sunday school girls that I taught, and I loved being involved in what they were doing and those types of things. But your personal and your professional account, whenever you're talking about promoting things at your school, really need to be kept separate. And the next thing that you need to look at, the licensure board is just giving you a recommendation. That's what they're doing, is giving you a recommendation. But your school is really going to be the one that sets those policies. So you need to find out, what does your school think about this? What do they have recommendations? Do they have policies that they want you, and they say you can't be friends? Because anytime you start promoting information out there, you need to be cautious. A public site is going to be about information to your public. But when you invite them into your private lives, you're inviting them into something that you may want to be really cautious about. Again, I said down here at the bottom, and I mean that because I could give you a great deal of evidence. Don't test the courts, because they hold teachers to a very higher level of freedom of speech. They just do, because of our occupation, and it usually doesn't go well for a teacher. So again, that's a session for another day. So let's talk about sharing photos. And one of the big things that you want to do here is you want to make sure that you check your FERPA restrictions on students. So at the beginning of the year, your school district probably put it out in the school handbook. They may have put it out on the demographic sheet that they get at the beginning of the year. But if a parent has opted out of wanting their pictures displayed on anything, then you need to be sure that you know that as a teacher. You need to be sure that you know that as the social media manager. One of the things that I ask the teachers to do in our school district is to know that about their classes, so that before they sent it to me, I knew that they had already looked at those FERPA restrictions. But let's just say that you want to get some pictures of students that are in the classroom, but you don't, you can't show all of their faces, because there's no need to do that. So you can do that by getting the pictures, the backs of their heads, or even doing a focus that is more on the front of the screen than really the back of the screen. And I'm going to defer to Emily here in just a minute to see if she's got anything to add to this. We had a couple of deal days. One was tips and tricks for taking better photos, and then another one was about learning how to use Canva and graphics. So those two are linked inside of here. And then the last thing before I defer to Emily about this is, I would suggest to you, I don't recommend this. I want to tell you that I don't recommend this. So some pictures you'll see, and it has a smiley face or something covering a student's face, okay? Because maybe that student is a foster student, but the teacher wants to use that picture or whatever. I don't recommend that, because it's actually identifying that student to the peers in their classroom. So if they all go on social media and go, oh, well, that's really cool. Tommy goes, well, why is Johnny's face covered? Okay, you've identified him for some reason, and I just don't think that's a good practice for you to do that. So, Emily, you got anything you want to add to that?
I will say something that I hadn't really considered before, but we recently updated here at ADE, and our photo release forms are used to just be photo release, but we updated it to include things that students, or adults in our case too, had made. So artwork that they've made, audio recordings, right? We've been doing a lot more podcasts and art contests, and it was just really not clear in our language before about how to do that. So you may consider updating that in your permission forms as well. So I know as an art teacher, we shared a lot of student artwork and whether you wanted to put names on it or not, or even just there are certain websites where you can upload their artwork, and I wasn't sure if our photo release forms covered that the same way because it wasn't clear. So be really
That's
clear with what kind of permissions you're asking for.
that's really good. That's good info there. I hadn't actually thought of that part yet about the about the artwork and things of that sort. So let's talk a little bit about how do you respond when somebody puts comments, because one of the things whenever we were setting up our pages to begin with in Alma that we went back and forth about, do we allow people to comment? Because you can turn the comments off. Do we allow them to say things that we do we not? And one of the things is that we wanted our social media to be engagement, but you need to be sure that you have some guidelines out there, okay? And you may not have to exactly post them on there. You could go on your Facebook page or Twitter or whatever and have the link to them. So I'm going to show you an example. I'm going to show you Fort Smith's here. So Fort Smith links back to, again, their guidelines, and it says that we reserve the right to remove the content, and if it's sexually harassing, obscene, whatever it is, and all of that. So thank you. Had somebody come in again. And you know, they spell it out. It's not necessarily directly on their website, on their Facebook page, but it links back to that. And the same thing in Alma. That's one of the things that we did. We put what our community guidelines were for all of our social media presence so that we have something to fall back on. I again hope that you don't ever have that. We kind of had a couple of situations where someone was putting inappropriate stuff on our social media, and keeping up with that and having a policy to say whenever I'm going to delete your comments, that's good for you to have, and it's a good backup. The other thing that I want to talk about real quickly is this Archive Social. So Archive Social is a company that will actually, you can pay for, that will monitor all your stuff. You can put words in there, like if you want to have catchwords that are in there or things that you focus on for the positive or for the negative. And it gathers all that in case you ever were FOI'd and you had to have comments or something like that, instead of you as the manager going and doing screenshots of everything. So that's just, again, something that I'm telling you about. It does cost money. It was something that we tried out, that Nip, the tech director, and I and Alma, we tried that out and we really liked it. We liked the reports we got. We liked the information we got from that. The next thing, what are some things that you need to consider when you're talking to your people about creating these social media accounts? So the very first thing that I'm going to tell you right off the bat is make sure that they have two-step authentication on everything. Ask your teachers to turn that on. You can do that on Twitter. There's a process on Facebook. It even allows you, if you get locked out, to say, hey, here's 2 friends you can contact to make sure this is me. But it is essential today with the hacking stuff. And again, not going too deep into the cybersecurity stuff, it's one of the first recommendations that you're all asked to do. And it is really essential when you're talking about your social media accounts. The other thing is you want people to find your information quickly. You want that. So try to come up with a naming scheme instead of just saying, oh, go name your page whatever you want your Twitter page to be. Go name your Facebook page whatever you want it to. You want to have a consistent naming scheme so that it's easily found when someone's searching for that. And then finally,
I'll say
yes.
too that was something I liked on the Fort Smith guidelines page. And then I'd also seen it, I don't remember what state it was, but they listed out and linked back to like, these are all of our official accounts. And so
Yes.
that's helpful to know that, like, if you see something that's not on that list, then
Yes.
that's not one of the ones that they actually are responsible for.
Right.
So I think
And
that's something that helps.
we had a list like that in Alma so that you could see that, except for we had some teacher pages, and I don't like that Facebook calls them this, but they call them secret pages. But those classroom pages that they have that were just exclusive for that, it wasn't really public information. So we listed that because I think it's real important for people to know that. Then the last two things, the links that are on this page, is this student data privacy information that we have on the department on the research and technology. And then we have all sorts of resources on our Smack Talk page that really talks about, hey, keeping your kids safe online. Again, that we don't really have the time to talk about today, but I do want to tell you this, and I do want to reference this because I'm going to go to this research page. If you're looking for one thing, there's some data privacy modules 1 through 12 that I absolutely love that we have inside of Ideas. But if you're looking for one thing, you need to go pick some pieces out of this student privacy thing. Daniel Collier and Ray Girdler did this, and it's got some really, really good stuff that has teacher components to it. Okay, moving on. So what do I need to think about on my content considerations? First of all, you kind of need to know where your audience is. So it's pretty typical. This is kind of general information. You might want to do a survey and find out where your people really are, because you may be a little bit different. Your district may be a little bit different, but in general, your parents and your grandparents are on Facebook. Usually on Instagram, you have students that are from 5th grade on up. Okay. And then think about this for YouTube, because I would really say your big three are Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But YouTube, a lot of kids have YouTube accounts when they're little. I mean, they're watching Bluey, they're watching videos, they're doing that kind of stuff. So you may want to involve YouTube in your big four instead of your big three. Twitter is usually the students, it's your older students, your alumni. But one of the things that I absolutely love about Twitter, and I have put that link here, is that you can get the embedded code by putting it in here and grab that code and then post that out on your website. So what does that mean? That means your feed is going to end up giving that information. So I'm going to scroll down here just a little bit so that you can see that. So it's the Twitter feed here on the school district page that I have that embedded code again that put that information out here. You can do that. Teachers do that so that any announcements that they're making on Twitter is going to go to their web page as well, so that you can see that. And if you're not following on Twitter, and again, that's okay, you're still going to see all of that information that's put out there. We're going to have to talk about Snapchat and TikTok for another day, because I don't have a lot of energy for that. I know that some schools are allowing their kids to do that in their social media classes, but again, that's a conversation for another day. So what's the difference in these platforms? What I need to know about that. So Twitter's going to allow you to have about 280 characters. It's really cool if you use those hashtags. For example, if I'm going to have prom, AMS prom 2022, I may use that hashtag to again go get that embedded code that has that hashtag, and then I can show all the prom pictures on a feed. You're going to have to monitor that, because you might get some people that hashtag something that's not appropriate. Okay. And I'm just telling you that. But really, for the most part, it's way better. The good side of that is way better, because everybody loves to see that. Everybody loves to see first day snow pictures. Be sure you're using visuals. Research tells us that visual things are what bring people in. And that if that's a graphic, if it's a picture, use those visuals, and then tag people when it's appropriate. And what I mean about that is, don't tag somebody's personal stuff, because again, you've brought them in on stuff that they may not want. So if it's their public account, go tag them, but don't tag their private stuff unless you know ahead of time that they're okay with that. Facebook, you can do the mentions. There's an analytics part to that we're going to kind of look at here in just a minute when we look at the scheduler in there. Instagram is going to doesn't allow you really put links unless you're putting it in your profile, but use pictures and videos. Use stories, but remember that it's difficult unless the story is tagging the district in there or the building in there for other people to see your stories. And you can't use the repost app that I'm going to talk about a little bit. And then YouTube, remember to kind of keep those YouTube videos under 2 minutes. And if you don't, let's just say that for your classroom, a teacher wants to do 2nd grade and they want to put some videos that are out there on YouTube, and they don't want those to be searchable. Okay. They've already checked their FERPA violations, their FERPA restrictions, all that kind of stuff. Use the unlisted feature when you go to post something on YouTube, so that it's not a searchable thing. I can't go find Mrs. Smith's class by doing that. The next thing is, how am I going to manage all this stuff? Oh my goodness, how am I going to do that? Okay. So something that Emily and I are a little bit more familiar with is Hootsuite. And I have that down here, but there's lots of things that she and I are actually looking at right now. But Hootsuite was wonderful because it gave all of this stuff in free, and now it's yanking it all back. So now you can only have 2 accounts in there, and you can only schedule up to 5 posts. But I do want to switch over here to show you on Facebook some things. So because Facebook, the Meta Business Suite, which used to be the Facebook Business Suite, but they've changed the name of it, it has that feature inside of there. So I'm going to switch over here so that you guys can see that. I'm on our DESE Digital Learning page. And I told you I was going to talk about a little bit of analytical information, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on this planner right over here on the left-hand side so that you guys can see that. So the planner allows you to schedule things ahead of time, schedule posts. And one of the things that I like about this for us, again, I don't know that this is going to be the same case for you in the school building and you're going to have school or the district, but it tells us down here when the optimal time is for us, for our audience to be on here to see our posts. So it's usually at 8 o'clock at night. And if I were going to create something at the bottom of it, it's going to say optimal. It will end up saying optimal down there, and it will tell you for that specific day what's the best time to post. So you can have your planner tied to your Instagram account. And that's excellent, because when you go to post something, if you have those 2 accounts tied together, then it's going to post to both of those. Twitter is not allowed anymore in here. I wish it were, but it's not. They took that off about 2 years ago. And then the other thing that I'm going to talk about real quickly is this Insights. So it's going to give you a little bit more analytical information when you go in here. So it's going to tell you, hey, this is how much coverage I got on this, and it'll give you great detail whenever you get in there, but it's going to say, this is how far we reached out here. This is what our posts have done, which is going to help you a little bit too. All of that feeds into, hey, how do I know that I'm posting things at the right time? Okay. So your planner and Facebook's one thing that I'm going to tell you, and it's free. It's with your business account. Okay. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about down here, if you want to look at some more research, this research about social media, it's really good. It allows you to kind of drill down even into your county. We don't really have a lot of time for that, but I'm going to tell you that you can do all of this from your phone too. So there's the business. This first one is the Business Suite app. There's Hootsuite. There's Repost. Repost is something that I use that app when I wanted to repost something that I had from like my cheer team, and I wanted to repost that onto my Instagram district account. I use that. And then of course Canva, which is going to have those graphics in there. You know, the other thing that I would say is that you need to really think about how to create successful posts. So I've already said to you, really, you need to use those graphics and pictures. That's one of the best things. I don't care which platform you're on. You can't do it on Instagram without a graphic or a picture, but Twitter, you need to do that because our eyes, what catches things. Be brief. Be real direct. If you're going to put any text on there, it's really better if you put a graphic, that your information is on the graphic and that you don't necessarily repeat that in your text, because you're doubling that. Okay. That's kind of a pet peeve of mine and Emily's on that. You really want to have it in your graphic. Okay. But you might have a link to a form or something. Be specific about what time it's going to be, what day it's going to be, all of those types of things, because it's really important to do that. Do posts that are going to be positive and uplifting. You know, I've heard a lot said about on Facebook, well, that's not reality of our lives. Okay. When you're talking about your personal pages, it's probably not. But when we're talking about our school and telling our story, we need that message to get out there that's uplifting. We need that to be a positive message. Remember that if you don't tell your story, somebody else is going to tell it, and they may not tell it correctly. So you need to be out there in front of it. Plan times to go live. I know that may be scary, but do it. Especially some of you media specialists, I have loved seeing y'all go live showing your books in your library. I love that stuff. Parents love that stuff. So be real and go out there and do it. it's first couple of times you do it, it is a little nerve wracking, but again, you can do it. You can do it. Be sure that you're sharing articles possibly that are educational articles. Now, I don't mean controversial ones, okay? I don't mean that. I mean, we're going to talk about RISE and literacy, but we're not going to start talking about school choice and all of that. Don't repost those necessarily, okay? Repost the things that are positive things about education and about maybe what you're doing right here in our school. Hey, did you know that we have 6 readers that have already reached 1 million words in our 3rd grade? You know, those types of things that you may have an article about that, but you need to reshare that with your people. Use your hashtags and your ats when you can. Do it, okay? Because it helps get your audience engaged with that. And then I did talk about this a little bit earlier. When you're sharing your community information, be very cautious, because when you have a shirt store that has a discount over here and hey, run down there and go get this discount, and you share that, what about the other 5 shirt stores in your community that you didn't share their information? So that's the caution that I have for you on that. And then the last thing would be, and this would probably be something Emily may want to chime in on, is that use branding when you can. Use your same wording, your same pictures, your same logo. Use that. Emily, you got anything you want to add to that?
Just, it makes it look nice, but it also makes it easier on you, right? You don't have to think about it as much, having those templates, knowing kind of what to expect. Anything you can make ahead of time and have prepared is just going to make it easier when it comes up. But we're at 12:01
Okay.
and we're good.
Oh, yay. Well, if y'all have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any of those questions. We're going to have some sessions this summer, I think, where I'm going to be doing social media a little bit more in depth and with a little bit more detail. So, but you can always contact me or Emily if you need any information about any of that, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Robin Finley and Emily. I have a few things I want to share. If y'all can let me share my screen as we go out.
Okay, let me go stop sharing. Okay, you should be able to.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Just want to share with you guys that we are coming up on the digital learning units living in beta mode, digital learning day that we have actually turned into a week. And starting next week on Monday, we will post in our social media. And then on the actual day, Tuesday, February 22nd of 2022, you can join me as I wear my tutu for tutu. Or if you'd like to, you can just be a little bit more normal like the rest of us and listen to our first podcast called Living in Beta Mode podcast. It'll be our launch episode, and we will launch that on Tuesday, as well as in addition to launching that, we are launching our YouTube channel where you can find all of our Deal Day recordings, our Homegrown Virtual PLC recordings of those, as well as our podcasts as they're released. So thank you for joining us on Deal Days. Our next Deal Day will be focusing on Nearpod tips and tricks. And this will be brought to you by our DLU resident expert, Stephen Walker, who will be sharing his wisdom with us. We really appreciate you guys being here today. And we hope that you will join us soon. If you want to find our YouTube channel, you can find it at Arkansas Digital Learning Unit as our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining us in the Digital Learning Unit, and we look forward to seeing you in March on March 17th when we talk about Nearpod. Have a great rest of your week.